What's happening, everybody? Welcome to week 2 of the fantasy basketball season. I'm Dan Vesperson. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball presented by FanDuel, the FanDuel Sportsbook, and the Believe network of podcasts. Today, we're going to be looking at the injury report for everybody going into week 2. We're going to be looking at a streaming guide for week 2 and giving you guys the best path through this upcoming week, where I will do my best. I can't promise anything, but if you have questions about sit-start stuff, try to throw them into the comments. I know I've done an absolutely atrocious job of dealing with that so far this season. It's just been too much with the amount of free time I don't have, but I'm trying to do that on these weekly preview shows. That's going to be one of the things that I'm attempting to work into the mix going forward. Let's begin. No waiting around. Please subscribe. You guys know the drill. I'm going to put my face off to the side so you guys can see more of the actual names on your screen. And here is the injury report. We're going to go through basically like the first 200 players. We'll go by pre-rank because mostly that's how people got drafted. If we miss one guy, I apologize, but this is going to mostly take care of it. Starting at the top, Luka Doncic, dealing with a sprained finger. He's basically out a week. I would not start him because the soonest he would be back would basically be by the end of this week. Lakers play a Sunday game on November the 2nd. They host the Miami Heat, so you might see him back for that one. I don't think you'd get him back any earlier than that. But, they hung in there and got a win without him yesterday, so maybe they feel like they can squeak out another one or two and you'll be okay. Anthony Edwards hurt his hamstring yesterday. Was that yesterday? I've lost track of time. No, that was Saturday. He is, it's a 4-game week for the Wolves, but I don't know how you could start him. I know he heals very quickly, and you might get 3 games out of Edwards, and ultimately you'll feel pretty nuts if you bench him and he gets 3 games this week. Just hamstrings are so screwy. You might see him miss the entire week, and I just can't afford to take a 0. So as much as he is an unbelievable talent and you want to get him in there all the time, unless we get some sort of great news going into later today, I think Edwards is probably a sit. Jalen Johnson is dealing with a turned ankle. The Hawks are every other day this week starting today. He's questionable, so maybe we get a little bit of good news. If he's a game time decision for this one in Chicago tonight, I'd probably start him. Meaning, like, the assumption then would be you get 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 games out of Jalen Johnson. But if he gets ruled out somewhat early for this game tonight, then I would probably bench him for the week. Josh Giddey is dealing with a hand thing as well. # thumb stuff. Bulls also play every other day this week, and I hate it. I hate the fact that we have all these questionable tags going into Monday night. Giddey, much like Jalen Johnson and Anthony Edwards, these guys are top 20, top 25 guys or better. So it's really hard. You're kind of reading the news as best you can. Try to read between the lines a little bit. Like, if Giddey is ruled out at the last minute today, you assume that means that he's probably 48 hours from being ready to go. If he's ruled out early, much like I think we're going to get on Anthony Edwards, then it's a little bit of a different calculus. And it sucks, but that's what we're left with right now. And so that's what we kind of have to roll with. That takes us to the next crop of 25 guys. I know this is a remedial way to show it to you guys, but the Yahoo 25 names apiece is actually kind of an interesting and fun way to just go through the whole list. Jalen Williams, yeah, he's out. Chet Holmgren is questionable, but he played through his back thing in his last ball game, so I'm going to assume that he'll play through it again. I'm basically just going through anybody that has an injury tag on him. LeBron, obviously out a few more weeks. De'Aaron Fox has already been ruled out today, although, that he's not super far off. I would assume like next week is probably the target time for Fox. They have a very light schedule after today where the Spurs play 3 times over, 10 days? I bet he comes back after that 10-day stretch because he's not missing many games. It's about games. It's not about days for some of these guys. So I think Fox will be off this entire week, and I think you should keep him benched. Porzingis is still dealing with the after effects of a flu bug. I don't know what the hell to make of that. I'd start him. I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't play at least 2 games this week. But, he is also Kristaps Porzingis. Joel Embiid is sitting out the front end of a back-to-back. Philadelphia's back-to-back is today, tomorrow. Then they're off until Friday. I assume he's going to play 3 games this week. So, do we see the minutes cap go up? I don't know. And he hasn't really been startable yet. But if you drafted him and you took the plunge, which I did not. I have 0 Joel Embiids this year. But if you did, He's probably going to get 3 games in, so you're probably starting him. Brandon Miller dealing with sore shoulderitis. That's made up. Charlotte does not play today, which is going to confuse a little bit on how many games you might get out of Brandon Miller. I would probably bench him because shoulders are weird. He might get back in for all 4 games this week, and yeah, then that hurts you. But you have to think of the upside versus the downside for someone like a Brandon Miller, who's probably a top 50, 60, 70 kind of range dude this year. He's number 251 so far, but his free throw percent is going to come up. So you know that's going to get better. And obviously, like, he left after whatever it was, 7-8 minutes in a ball game. So the minutes are artificially deflated. I think he's going to be a 60 range guy this year. And 3-game week out of a 60 range guy is very good. But like, you can find a top 100 to 125 dude on the wire who's going to play 4 games this week. And that might level off with Brandon Miller playing 2.5 roughly. So like, the possible loss, let's say you start Brandon and he plays 0 games, is huge versus the gain. What are you going to miss out on, basically, if you start a 4-game guy who's like a top 125, 130 dude, is not that big of a gap to Brandon Miller if he only plays in, say, 3 games this week. And if he only plays in 2, the 4-game guy might even outperform him. So that's the calculation you're doing when you're looking at it from a weekly standpoint. Garland, you're not starting. Kobe White, you're not starting. Tyler Hero, you're not starting. Andrew Nembhard, you're not starting. Basically, anybody that's not definitely in, once you get outside the top 75, you're not playing them. And for the Pacers, we're not going to get an update on anyone until Wednesday. It's a 3-game week. So weekly lineup, folks, you're stuck with a poor situation there. You're not going to get any news on any of these guys. So anybody on the Pacers that's banged up right now, I'm benching them this week. Let's keep rumbling along. We're doing this at a pretty good clip. I'm hoping that we can keep these weekly lineup shows in the 20 to 25 minute range going forward. That's kind of my target. I don't think these need to be the world's longest shows because we can talk about streaming names a little bit more as the week goes, because the players that are worth streaming are going to change every day. And I'll give you a few options as we talk about the streaming chart in today's show. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I will, however, remind you guys to please subscribe to the show. Please check out the show description for all the things. It's got all the things in the show description. What are some of the things you can find in there? We've got our Patreon account, which is a micro Patreon. It's $1. I think that if we get up to 500 of those, I can pretty much just like shut it down. Not shut it down, but like we won't need any more at that point. That gives us this base, especially in the off season where no pod revenue is really coming in or very small amounts of it, where suddenly there's just like an extra $500 lying around that allows me to keep doing all of this stuff for free. Now, right now, like October, November, these are the big months. The show makes enough money on its own in these months. So like this isn't the time where the Patreon is needed as much, but it will be to cover things up later on. And that's why I set it for $1. Because there are tens of thousands of you guys that are listening, watching, whatever. If just a handful of you guys do the $1 Patreon, we can do all this stuff for free until the end of time. Also in the show description, our buddies over at fantrax.com/oldmansquad. By the way, Yahoo has opened up their set your weekly lineups button again. I guess we yelled at them enough that they opened that up. We've got our Google Sheet completely for free. Links to iTunes, Spotify, my Twitter, Blue Sky, all that stuff is in there. Our Discord. Please do check out that show description. Benedict Mathurin is the next name on the list. Definitely benching him. He's got to get an MRI on his toe. That's not a good sign. Jalen Green might be back this week, but I don't think you're playing him until he is. Bradley Beal's not a guy that you should have drafted anyway, and you're definitely benching him because he sat out a non-back-to-back with his back stuff. Kevin Porter Jr., keep him benched. Keegan Murray, keep him benched. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised to see Keegan Murray back next week. Zach Edey, keep him benched. And there aren't that many other guys that are hurt anymore. That's kind of amazing. Isaiah Collier, like, I don't know that he even needed to be drafted, but keep him benched. Keontae George putting up big assist numbers with Collier out, so that's been a nice little bonus. DeJounte Murray, obviously not back for a while. Yves Missy, he's not good enough where you need to throw him in anyway, but keep him benched. Zachary Reese-Shea, kind of the same story. He might play, but he's not good enough that you need to start him regardless. All these guys, as we continue to scroll, folks on YouTube, you can see all the names. You're not dropping any of these guys in your lineup. The only one on this page that is remotely close to fantasy value, and actually has been Dylan Brooks. Some of that is because Jalen Green is out and Brooks is taking 20 shots a ball game. He's dealing with a questionable tag, sore groin, throwing it up on the screen so everybody can see it. He's a mirror. Remember we talked about this last year? I call these guys mirror guys. Meaning whatever they are on Monday, you mirror that with your weekly lineup decisions. It's only a 3-game week for Brooks. So if he's not playing tonight, he definitely doesn't need to be in a weekly lineup. You're going to hold on to him in daily stuff. And I don't know that anybody else really needs to be talked about. Obi Toppin, I mean, Pacers, we just talked about it. Anybody that's questionable on the Pacers, you bench them. Yeah, I think that's probably it from an injury standpoint. If you have any other start, sit questions, weekly lineup, folks, feel free to throw them in the comments section. I'm going to try to monitor this one today, and we'll get to that at some point in the afternoon. Let's look at the streaming board, and a lot of folks are looking at it right now. Why are so many people in my Google Sheet right at this moment? I didn't move any names around. I guess everybody's looking at it because the week ahead. Well, that's cool. Thanks for checking it out, everybody. Let's talk about the week ahead. Start with the bad schedule. Just one team, the Clippers, are the bad schedule this week. The Clippers have only 2 games. I will add, though, if you have a Clipper that's kind of stream level, which would be like Derek Jones Jr., Brooke Lopez. Sorry, Brooke Lopez. You're not a 9-cat 12 team guy anymore. At this point, you could probably just hang on through tomorrow because the Clippers have a game in Golden State on Tuesday. It's a low traffic day, so that's good. Although there aren't really any ultra high traffic days this week. Today is an 11-gamer, and that's the closest you've got to maybe having an overload. I think generally this week, you can add games to your ledger basically every day. If you have a full roster on any day this week, you probably got a little bit unlucky just in terms of like how your team's schedule stacked up. But it's a pretty well-balanced week from a games played standpoint. Especially the tail end of the week goes 4-8, 6-8. Anyway, not super important to this discussion right now. So if you have a Clipper that's stream level, I would hang on and consider making a move on Wednesday. Not necessarily because there's no other option, because you do have Golden State that goes back-to-back to start the week. Oklahoma City goes back-to-back to start the week. Philadelphia goes back-to-back to start the week. And there are some streaming options on those teams, and we'll talk about them in just a minute. The main reason is every week you shouldn't just be streaming guys at random unless there's like a really good burger board, so an injury replacement type of guy on one of these clubs. Does Golden State have that right now? No, absolutely not. Golden State has a relatively tight rotation at this point. Al Horford is a stream level guy, but he's not going to play in the back-to-back anyway. Kuminga's been added after a decent first week. Podziemski is kind of stream level, but he probably hasn't been dropped yet. So, like, there isn't the guy. Same thing with Oklahoma City. We had some guys that were really nice pickup stream level dudes, but as Cason Wallace comes back, I don't think you can trust AJ Mitchell and Aaron Wiggins quite as much as you could while those guys were out. Alex Caruso could show back up at a moment's notice. He's in concussion protocol. To me, at this point, and the other side of that is Oklahoma City and Golden State, they have 4-game weeks, meaning they only have 2 games after Tuesday of this week. So at that point, you either make another move later in the week, and so now you're using 2 weekly moves on the same roster slot, and you turn, let's say again, you're starting with the Clippers, so you're turning a 2-game week first into a 4-game week. That's good. You're adding 2 games played, and then you're using another move to turn it into a 5-game week. So 2 moves, you had 3 games played. That's not bad, but it's not our main target. What you could also do is, if you wait through till Wednesday, and yeah, in the short term, you seemingly lose a game. But on Wednesday, you can make a move to turn a 1-game Clippers week into a 3-game week from a much larger selection of possible teams. Most of the NBA plays 3 times Wednesday through Sunday. Not everybody, but most. You have like, I think, a solid 10 to 15 teams to pick from. I didn't count them out, but like you can just see it at a glance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there's like 10 teams that play 3 times Wednesday through Sunday. So instead of picking just from Golden State and Oklahoma City, and by the way, you're probably not, and Philadelphia, you can throw Philly on there as well, but Philly goes Friday, Sunday. So if you pick a Philly team, you're probably holding the entire week. And so now you've turned a 2-game week into a 4-game week and you're done. You're squatting on it at that point. If you're going OKC or Golden State, you're probably making another move after Thursday because they go 3 times in 4 nights to start the week and then 1 time over 3 days to finish it. So you can turn that into 2 games over the final 3 days. But again, the main point we're trying to make here is if you're sitting on the Clippers 2 days into the week, you'll have a better idea of what categories you need to attack against your opponent than 0 days into the week. There is an advantage to waiting a little bit. That advantage is more data on what type of player you need to stream. And that advantage is more options on what player you could stream. So instead of now, admittedly, OKC, some of those guys are probably stream level. Philly has some guys that are stream level that may or may not be on rosters, like a Quentin Grimes or a Kelly Oubre. Dominic Barlow was in there, but he got hurt in their last ball game. But again, like if you look at some of these other teams, what if you decide you wanted rebounds? None of the guys on those teams are particularly good rebounding options. And instead, you can wait. And then the Celtics become a team you could pick from, the Hawks, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Cavaliers. Like literally every team at the front end of the alphabet has, except Brooklyn, has 3 games over the final 5 days this week. You could also look for a team in there that maybe has 4 games over 6 days. I don't know if any of those, the Lakers actually are in that club. Lakers are going to have some streaming options because half their team is out. Memphis has some options. There's a lot of choices starting on Wednesday. That, again, that's what you can do after the Clippers. Now, admittedly, you could also do that after picking up a Thunder or a Sixer or a Warrior. I just really don't like the idea of using 2 of your 4 weekly moves on 1 roster slot on your team by Wednesday. That only leaves you 2 moves left the rest of the week. And if you needed to move anybody else by Wednesday, somebody got hurt, you had a different streamer that you're not super thrilled about, whatever, now you're down to 1 move. It's a little bit more important to squat on moves in the playoffs because if you take a 0 in the playoffs and you lose that week, you're just done. That's the end of your season. If you take a 0 for a couple of games during the regular season on a player you care about, it's not the end of the world. So you don't need as many moves during the regular season to deal with injuries as you do during a playoff week. So you could use 2 moves by Wednesday on 1 slot. I just like, we got to go back almost to the tenets of Old Man Squad streaming, which is try to get 2 games added, for per move made, meaning you often need to think about 4 to 6 days of game action on each move you make, which is why if you go Clippers, if you have a Clipper, you have to get off them. They have only 2 games this week. You have those still 2 choices where either way you can add 2 games. You can go from Clippers today to a team with a 4-game week. You add 2 games that way, but you hold them throughout the entire week or until that 4-game stretch is done, which, you know, for Golden State is after Saturday. For Oklahoma City, it's not until Sunday. So that's 4 games over 7 days. It's not as good. But if you go Clippers, 2 games over 7 days, to Warriors, 4 games over 6 days, that's a way to not only add 2 games played, but it only took you were able to shorten, well, Clippers have 2 games over 5 days, I guess. So you add 1 extra day and 1 extra game, but you can still make another move on Sunday if you wanted to. One team you could actually think about going toward this week, and I tried to color code the teams on the left side of the screen if you guys are watching on YouTube. This Google Sheet is in the show description. If you guys want to just play along, please feel free to do so. The teams that I've color coded in green on the left side are teams that have a good schedule to start the week. So Warriors, Thunder, Orlando actually has a good schedule to start the week, although their stuff is flip-flopped. Orlando was a 5 games in 7 nights situation that started back on Friday. Today they go, then tomorrow they're off, then they're on Wednesday, Thursday. So 3 games over 4 nights is always somewhat enviable. Philly, I didn't highlight because I don't think I would go Philly because they got a back-to-back and then they're off for 2 days. So you're really only adding, I don't want to have to add a team for 7 days to get those 2 bonus games unless it's a player I really, really, really like. So I'd rather go Orlando, OKC, because they go 3 times in 4 nights, which does still add 2 games. I know my voice is cooked. I sound like I'm going through the puberts. Thank you, coaching 3 baseball games yesterday, including 2 games for 5-year-olds. Do you know how much yelling you have to do in 2 hours of coaching 9 5-year-olds on a baseball field where projectiles are flying at them? A lot of yelling. My voice is dead. My family thinks it's so funny that my voice only exists on Wednesday night. My voice comes back from Sunday by Wednesday afternoon. I sound like myself until Thursday afternoon when the younger one's practices, and then the older one's practice is Friday, and then my voice is gone for Saturday, and it's back Sunday morning just in time for me to coach 2 to 3 baseball games again. How did I get to this place? Freeze frame. How did we get here? So anyway, 3 games over 4 nights does give you a 2-game bonus because the Clippers have 1 game over those first 4 days this week also. So Orlando is also in the mix. I also color-coded on the left side Indiana blue and Boston blue because they go 3 games Wednesday through Saturday. So if you picked up a team with a back-to-back, that's a club you could maybe move toward. They also play first thing next week, which I like because it's 4 games in 6 days. You get a game to start the week. If you wait all the way until Sunday, which is the team that kind of pairs up nicely with the Warriors stream early in the week, Miami is that club. The Heat start a 5 games in 7 days stretch starting on Sunday of this week. That is the best possible scheduling stretch in the NBA. And then next week, you actually have a few teams that start those 5s and 7s. Those start to pick up a little bit over the next couple of weeks. You get into some NBA Cup pool play action that gives you some very low traffic days. It gives you some very high traffic days because every game on a particular day counts for the NBA Cup, and everybody wants to show off their fun courts. And so you get these weird scheduling stuff where you'll have a team that doesn't play and then they go a bunch. And then the actual NBA Cup tournament isn't actually until December this year, which I thought was November last year. I don't remember. That's when things really get wonky. But we don't have to worry about that yet. Just think about like the pathway through the week for when you're going to make your moves. Otherwise, like there aren't that many really bad schedules. Indiana has a kind of a bad schedule to start the week, but then by the middle of the week, their schedule picks back up again. Indy is the only team in the NBA that does not play Monday and or Tuesday. So if you have a pacer, you could move off of them to a team that goes back to back to start the week. But then you have to come back to a team that has 3 games the rest of the week. So that's problematic. You turn a 3-game Pacers week into a 5-game week overall with 2 moves. I don't like it, Sam I am. Your streaming, especially early in the year, your streaming should really be about attacking categories needed. I don't know that you need to stream 2 roster slots early in the year. I think you should be hunting for guys that have rest of season appeal because someone you thought had rest of season appeal is not going to end up having it. I forgot to color code the Knicks, by the way. They're kind of like a semi not great schedule to start the week. They have 1 game over the first 4 days this week, so you could actually move from New York to Oklahoma City. You gain 2 games there, but the Knicks have 2 games over the end of the week, so after that, you'd have to move to somebody else on Friday that then kind of matches New York. So again, you go from a 3-game week probably to a 5-game week, but your advantage there is maybe you set yourself up. You could even go back to the Knicks if you wanted to for a 6-day haul. That's your goal there is to come back. Yeah, you only add against the Knicks, you only add 2 games with 2 moves, but maybe over the span of like 10 days, you add 3 games or something like that. So that's the stuff you need to think about when you're long streaming. Again, if you only are streaming one roster slot, you can use like 3 moves a week on that one particular slot. You can go to somebody with a back-to-back to start the week. Then you go to somebody that has a Wednesday, Thursday back-to-back, which is Orlando. Then you go to a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. And then you go to a Sunday, Monday back-to-back. And you sort of roll into this series of back-to-backs with one roster slot right now. As the season goes and as you get a better idea of who your guys are that are truly rest of season dudes, then I think you go up to 2 streaming slots and you want to try to use 1 to 2 roster moves for each of those every week. So turn a 3-game week into a 5 or 6-game week that way. Turn a different team from a 3-game week into a 6-game week. That's what you should be looking for. 6 is hard, by the way. How you pull that off. In fact, I don't know that it can really be pulled off in one roster slot with only 2 moves. So you got to like turn a 3-game week into a 5-game week. That's kind of what you're looking for in each of these. But that's only if you're looking at 7-day stretches. I haven't planned this out, so it's not going to be good podcasting. But like if you went, obviously starting with a 2-game week, you want to get off of that. That's the easiest way to maximize games played. But there are ways to take a 3-game week or a team that maybe has, like Indiana is a good example of this. They have a 3-game week. They're sort of heavily loaded in the middle end of this week. But actually, if you look farther, the Pacers only play 5 games over 12 days right now. All right. So that's a much easier thing to work with. Who plays more than 5 games over the next 12 days? All right. Scan the board a little bit. All right. How about Boston? They go 7 times over the next 12 days. Literally, you could just switch to a Celtic and you'd gain 2 games played over 12 days with 1 roster move. Or you can look at somebody that, the Pacers only go 4 times to start this week, and then they go 4 times over the following, 8 days or 7 days? That's 8 days. So 1 game over 4, then 4 games over 8. You could try to go 3 games over the first 4, and then try to go 5 games over 8 days. That's pretty doable. And then you add 3 games played with 2 moves, right? Or did I get, is there anybody that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, go from 5 to, is there anybody that goes 9 over those 12 or 8 over those 12? I bet somebody goes 8 over those 12. I just haven't done the proper amount of digging. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know. Anyway, do some digging. All I'm saying is look long term. Have the long view. 8 over 12 be like 4 over the first 6 and then 4 over the next 6. You might have to make 2 moves to get there. In any event, this went longer than I intended. We got lost on a journey, a side journey of how to long stream, and you don't even really need to long stream at the beginning of the year. So short stream away, have fun with it, save a move if you can for the end, because you're going to be attacking a category or 2. That's really the main advice early in the season. Try to find rest of season appeal guys, and if you're streaming, try to figure out what categories actually matter as opposed to just picking up a guy that seems like they might be a fun dude to add. Thanks for watching, everybody. This is your week 2 preview show. Please subscribe on the way out. We're going to try to do one of these every single week until pretty late in the season, and then we're going to do one of these every single day when you get to the fantasy playoffs. Basically, like from 6 weeks near the end of the season until the last 1 or 2 weeks. We'll do 4 to 5 weeks in a row where we just break down the streaming card every single day. If you need options on those teams, feel free to ask about it in the show description. I'm going to really try hard to respond to those today before the games begin. I got to do a weekend recap show right now. Dan Besbris on Twitter. Find me over there, DanBesbris. I will see you guys when I see you, which I hope is real damn soon. So